Hello, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. We're going to be looking today at the Muratorian Canon. Thanks for being with us. So this is also known as the Muratorian fragment as well. So I'd always heard it was like this 170 AD list of most of the New Testament. You know, they say the earliest complete list, I think, is 367 AD, Athanasius's Easter message, which he also advocated burning books of heterodoxy and heresy. But anyhow, let's get started here. And we're on Wikipedia, and it says this because I think you might be interested in the backstory. There's actually a few different websites you can get this information, as well as various books and Bible encyclopedias and this type thing. But this is pretty basic and good. Okay, it's a copy of perhaps the oldest known list of most of the books of the New Testament. The fragment, consisting of 85 lines, of which there are some reproductions here, is a 7th century, which is 600s AD, Latin manuscript bound in the 7th or 8th century codex or books from the library of Columbanus Monastery at Bobbio Abbey. It features, suggesting it's a translation from a Greek original written about 170 AD or as late as the 4th century, so you can, the 300s. It's a couple hundred year variation. Both of the degraded condition of the manuscript and the poor Latin in which it was written have made it difficult to translate. The beginning of the fragment is missing and it ends abruptly. The fragment consists of all that remains of a section of a list of all the works that were accepted as canonical by the churches known to its original compiler. Here's where it gets its name. It was discovered in the Ambrosian Library in Milan, that's Ambrose of Milan, by Father Ludovico Antonio Muratori, 1672-1750. The most famous Italian historian of his generation, published in 1740. So, here's the characteristics. Its author refers to Pius I, Bishop of Rome, from 140 to 155 as recent. So this is why it dates to 170 AD. But Hermas wrote The Shepherd, that's the Shepherd of Hermas, most recently in our time in the city of Rome, while Bishop Pius, his brother, was occupying the chair of the church of the city of Rome. And that's fascinating that the Hermas of the Shepherd of Hermas was the brother of the Bishop of Rome, Pius. And therefore, it ought indeed to be read, but it cannot be read publicly to the people in church, either among the prophets, whose number is complete, or among the apostles, for it is after their time. So that's kind of interesting where they were getting how this was done, how the Bible lists were done, which I've done several videos on showing the 1st century. The Bible itself in the New Testament was saying it was inspired. So the document contains a list of the books of the New Testament, a similar list concerning the Old Testament having apparently preceded it. It is in barbarous Latin, which has probably been translated from original Greek, the language prevailing in Christian Rome until 200 AD. Bruce Metzger has advocated for the traditional dating, 170-ish AD, as is Charles E. Hill. This is no longer a university-agreed dating. In 2003, one biblical historian noted that both this early dating and the Roman origin of the Muratorian canon list have been strongly challenged. I'm thinking that's actually Ehrman who challenged it. The unidentified author accepts the 4 gospel, the last 2 of which are Luke and John, but the names of the first 2 are at the beginning are missing. So scholars find it highly likely the missing 2 gospels are Matthew and Mark, although that remains uncertain. Notice it would have even been in the order we have it today as well. Also accepted by the author of the Acts of all apostles and 13 of the Pauline epistles. The epistle of Hebrews is not mentioned. The author considers spurious letters claiming to have Paul as an author that are ostensibly addressed to the Laodiceans, Colossians 4, and to the Alexandrians. Of these he says they're forged in Paul's name to further the heresy of Marcion, which the Marcionite heresy was huge in the 2nd century. Probably deserves its own video at some point. Maybe many of you already know about it. But that is common for millennia, to write in somebody else's name to justify your position. Even Erasmus, I was reading Erasmus one day, and he's like, there's stuff claiming to be written by me that I didn't write. Of the general epistles, the author accepts the epistle of Jude, and also says 2 epistles bearing the name of John are counted in the Catholic Church. 1st and 2nd Peter and James are not mentioned in the fragment. And it's clear that the author assumed that the author of the Gospel of John was the same as the author of the 1st epistle of John. And then he goes on to explain why that is. And then he goes on to talk about the apocalypse of John, who he assumes wrote to 7 churches before Paul wrote to 7 churches. He most likely has in mind the gospel writer, since he assumes that the writer of the Gospel of John was an eyewitness disciple who knew Jesus. And personally, I have no problem, and I've done a video or 2 on this, of the pre-78 dating of John. There's a little bit of internal evidence, and a lot of the supposed external evidence from history, a lot of that is untrustworthy history. Like when you write about Papias, people are like, Papias, he's like, oh, just read him, and I think you might find some things you find a little fishy, and I won't even go into all that. The author also, the Muratorian Canon, remarks they received the apocalypse of Peter, although some of us will not allow the latter to be read in church. And so it's not sure if that's the Greek apocalypse of Peter or the Coptic apocalypse of Peter, the latter of which, unlike the former, was Gnostic. The author also includes the Book of Wisdom written by the friends of Solomon in his honor in the canon. So here's the thing. Most of you know your 27 books in the New Testament. If not, you can get a Bible. Here's what he accepts is right. The Muratorian Canon, probably 170-ish AD, even though the earliest copy we have is from the 600s, maybe 700s AD. But again, internally it mentions that Pius was recently the head of the church in Rome, and that was 140 to 155 AD. So probably Matthew, probably Mark, we discussed that, and then for sure it mentions Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy. I'm afraid Sister Waldron is going to start singing this Sunday school song if I keep going. I need to get her to do a video singing that song. It's a great way to teach the books of the Bible. Titus, Philemon, she's our photog person here, our videographer. But then it doesn't mention Hebrews, James, which I'm sure Martin Luther would be glad about that, 1st and 2nd Peter, and then probably mentions 1st John and either 2nd or 3rd John, but not both. It does mention Jude. It does mention Revelation, Apocalypse of John, but it also mentions the Apocalypse of Peter and the Wisdom of Solomon, which are not accepted. So that's pretty interesting that several of the books, let's see how many books, so you've got 27, so 26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 22 books are mentioned, and some of those, 1st John and Matthew and Mark, are probably, but we'll go ahead. So 22 of the 27 books are mentioned, and then 2 books, Apocalypse of Peter and Wisdom of Solomon, are mentioned that are not canonical. I need to do some more videos on why the canon is closed at 27 in the New Testament, because a ton of you have somehow bought into the Catholic Church is hiding all kinds of books from us. And look, I'm not in the Catholic Church, but there's not some grand conspiracy. I get accused of being in conspiracies constantly. I'm just not. And so there is, I'm not in total agreement with Eric Hoffer's book on the citizen philosopher Hoffer. But he does, sometimes people can just read into stuff all the time. So God bless you. Thanks for being with us. This is the Muratorian fragment. It's a very valuable historical document concerning the Bible. And please subscribe, hit the bell notification, join us daily. Please listen to our playlist, and also listen to our church services on here. Join us at Facebook, New Life of Albany, Georgia as well. We love you. Oh, also, we've got a Biblical Archaeology Today podcast with Steve Waldron. It's not under New Life. It's with Steve Waldron. Love you. God bless. Bye-bye.